Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's online session on Procurement Dictionary. My name is Ondruchová, and I'm a trainee and administrator at ProIBIS. And what is the topic of today? We'll be looking at the well-known term RFX. Just before we get started, and I'll have the pleasure to introduce you our guest speakers, allow me a little housekeeping. If you have any questions during this session, this presentation, you can use the application Slido, which you can see on the lower right corner of your screen, and type any of your questions in. Of course, first you need to use the hashtag and a dictionary too, so the Slido would allow you to type in your questions. I'll bring them up during the presentation, or we will also have the time for questions at the end. And why Procurement Dictionary? Every field has its own language, its own terminology, and procurement isn't an exception. However, terms used in procurement can be quite complex and tricky. So we decided for this reason to make a list of key terms and abbreviation in procurement for you, so you can use it, and it should serve also as a manual for procurement officers that are new to the business, but also as well as an inspiration for the best in class. And why is it different to those already published? It's primarily built on practice and experience of the experts in procurement field. Back to our guests today. Both are highly experienced procurement leaders in various industries. Please welcome Doris Ferkovic. Hello, Doris.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. And Bernard Adamczak. Hello, Bernard.
Good afternoon.
Doris has been working in IT, telco, and banking in executive functions and has more than 25 years of hands-on procurement experience. Adam is currently the head of supply chain management within a European company distributing and producing plastics. He has also been responsible for global purchases since 2010 and gained experience also in automotive industry. So welcome again. I'm very glad you're joining us today. So let's get to the topic. Today's terms is request for something, the X representing something. If we look in the clever books, the definition says it's a catch-all terms that refers to any document that is a request for something. It represents documents like requests for proposals, requests for quotations, and many more. May I ask you, how do you see this term from your point of view in your practice, in general terms, before we get to the practical types of the RFX? Doris, would you like to start?
Sure, not a problem. Thank you again, all of you, for joining us today. Actually, talk about RFXs. Everybody is confused because there is not a real straight line between what is an RFI, what is an RFQ, what is an RFP. But what we have all to take into consideration at first sight is that these tools actually give us and ensure transparency in the processes. So the RFI, in my opinion, is the general request where you're actually looking into the market to find out what are your potential future participants in any RFQ or RFP. RFQ, it's a simple form where the item is well defined and what you're asking for is just the quotation price, while it's a more complex request, which usually lasts longer and has more details in the future relationship, just in a nutshell. Bernard?
Yes, so it's definitely the tool, or there are the tools which are giving us possibility to save the time, but before we need to invest the time with our internal clients, with the people from our companies, to be prepared, to be sure what we're really looking for on the market. So in my industry, it's usually the time consuming before we start, but after that, it gives us, as you said, transparency, and we are more professional in relationship with our potential suppliers. That's all.
Great. Before we go to have a closer look at and define each request, which you can find in your industry, may I ask you if the process itself is electronical, or is it mostly done? How do you do it? Is it by email, or do you have any software for this use? Doris, would you like to?
Sure. Since my experience ranges through different, I must say that I used different electronic tools in the past, and usually they are best for the RFQ process, the RFP process. When we are talking about RFIs, usually it goes by emails, and usually it is targeting a certain group of suppliers. So when you look at the basic of the three processes or three tools, the RFI, it's let's say, the most generic one. Therefore, in that one, in my industries, we didn't use electronic tool. For the RFQs and for the RFPs, yes, of course. And definitely it helped everybody if everybody will to have access to electronic tools. Emails are handy. However, emails tend also to lose track of the process itself.
Bernard, how is it with you? How do you?
It's a little bit different in my industry because the industry itself is different. We are using different forms for request for the information or request for the proposal, but the tool which we are using for the plastics, for different resins, it's the email, because it's depend on the specifications of the OEMs for whom we are working for in the automotive industry. And just for your understanding, the specification could be 25 pages when all details are described, certificates, tests, and so on. And to understand about what we are talking and with whom we are talking with huge market players very often, and with the global players. And we need to adjust the tool with which we are working to their needs as well, not only to ours. So different forums, but the tool is email, traditional tool.
Mm-hmm. And as far as the concept, if we go to the first one, then the RFI, which is the request for information, you've mentioned that before, which is usually the first one in the process when you start requesting for something. do you have a specialized form, a supplier self-information? Is it already set, or does it change every time, or does it have some common points which are similar every time, and then you add something in the different type of the for the each supplier?
We are asking for.
Sorry, Doris, if you like to start, because you have different experience for different type of industry. So, for example, in banking, is it always the same sheet which the supplier received, or does it change every time?
I would say that whether it is banking, whether it is telco, or it is IT, basically we have to make the difference not between the industry, but between general procurement and production procurement. Let's call it production procurement, because what I have been working with, it's general procurement, meaning that I have always worked to fulfill the requirements of the organization and sometimes also the clients, but in a different role that, for example, Bernard is having. Therefore, in my experience, we have had some common elements in the forms, but they are not unified because the general procurement is so vast in terms of stuff that you can actually look for that it doesn't make sense to have a unified form. The form usually at the end comes to the basic information that you request from the supplier, which are usually also publicly available on different websites. But then you go into some of the information that usually are company information. I can make maybe an example, which is very simple. But for example, you are looking for cleaning services, and you are looking for cleaning services to cover the whole territory of your country. So you would need to know how many people the suppliers would be able to deploy throughout the country in the different regions that you require it, in the different towns, how much they are certified for different types of cleaning services, because some of them are regulated. You would need to know general terms about employees, how many they have, what is their churn rate, how many people come, how many people leave. And of course, this type of RFI would be totally different from an RFI, for example, for some technical maintenance. Although there would be still some basic elements that would be the same in both requests. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that in Bernard's case, that doesn't even exist.
Yeah. In my case, it will be totally different. First, we are talking about 100% purchasing for production or for distribution, not about the general purchasing. So it's possible to prepare one form like the supplier self-information. And if we're talking about commodities, so the general area plastics, of course, the general information like turnover of our supplier, the product portfolio, production lines, capacity, etc. But it is also possible to specify in the portfolio concrete things which are interesting, concrete family of the materials which are interesting for us. So if we have, for example, we are looking for the supplier of polyamide, we can just put in this supplier self-information the questions like, if we are talking about the raw materials, modified materials, which kind of the modification, we can describe the modifications, for example, glass fiber or talcum. We can put the information, we are talking about the capacity, we can ask about the capacity, but we can also ask about the quantity of the production lines, specify the production lines. The document could be 2 sites, but could be also 20 sites. And my opinion is better to invest the time before and to have one general document and modify it according to the potential suppliers. But definitely the work should be done together with R&D department, because even very educated and experienced buyer is not good enough in case of this technical stuff. So preparation of this document together with the R&D department, and then small modifications or adjustment during the process.
Thank you very much. The reason why I ask is because if we define what is RFI, the question at the end would be, what is the expected outcome? What is the primary goal of the RFI? And since you already described the process, which is different to what you expect depending on the field, so can I briefly, so we don't confuse our listeners for the RFI, if you could quote very easily, what is the outcome of RFI if you do it from your point of view? Doris, please.
It's getting additional information from the market about the potential future suppliers in terms of what is usually not available on public websites, and what is their possibility to fulfill our needs in general terms, but very high level.
Thank you. And Bernard, please.
Define the basic terms of conditions to eliminate misunderstanding and to be able to compare apples with apples.
Thank you very much. Let's move to another request, which would be, you already mentioned it, the one which usually appears is request for proposal. So again, we start with the definition. Since each RFI has a different goal and different expected outcome, could you tell me what the RFP stands for you in this case, if we follow the process we started with the RFI? Doris, could you please start?
Sure. The RFP, it's definitely a more complex process. And the outcome of an RFP should be a supplier selection, finalization. And at the end of the RFP, after, of course, negotiations, we should be able to sign a contract or to enter into a contractual relationship with the future supplier. So the RFP usually, in my experience, it's based on some detailed technical or functional specifications to which the suppliers who are invited to the RFP have to provide their proposals, and they have to fulfill everything that is described in the RFP document, meaning the technical or the functional specification, clearly indicating the outcome of their proposal, meaning what would be the deliverable if they were awarded the contract. And of course, it contains all the terms and conditions, even some major terms and conditions of the future contractual relationship.
Thank you. Request for proposal, what does it stand for you, Bernard, in the terms of your field of expertise?
In this case, we are using the existing documents of our customers. For example, technical data sheet for the product which you are looking for. Technical data sheet is like the recipe. There are more important information, but never producer will write exact description of the product. It will be maybe 60% of the necessary information. The second document which we are using is a OEM specification, which could be the next 40% of the information. The OEM specification, just let's take the example. We have our OEM is Skoda, and we are looking for the material for the glow boxes. And the OEM is specified the emission or smell or another technical values in very precise way. So technical data sheet, OEM specification, but it's not all, because even we are using these two documents in request for proposal to be really sure, but that we are on the good way. We are talking about the production. So there is the step number 3. The easiest way is to use the existing materials to send to our potential suppliers if we are sure after request for the information that they are the right suppliers, the samples of these materials, and they can analyze the chemical in the laboratory, the materials, and then they are really sure that this what they are offering is what we need. Because it could be in the production area that technical data sheet and the OEM specification and the existing material are not exactly the same. They could be the slight differences, and the devil is in these details. So more time, a little bit more time. I just give you an example. Implementation of the replacement of the new material could take minimum 6 months, but there are the situations when this is 2 years or even longer for more complicated material. So this is before implementation of the new supplier and the new material. So it's not so maybe difficult in few industries, but there are industries like automotive, wide industry, in which it's a time consuming. But there is a benefit for this. The lifetime is 7 years. So you invest your time and the work of your team, but then you are beneficial during the whole lifetime.
Thank you. Great. So if I say it in the human speaking language again, the end of goal of the RFIP is to determine which suppliers are likely to be the most capable of meeting the organizational needs and select those suppliers that should be invited to submit bids. Do you agree, or would you like to add something?
Actually, I would say that the RFP is already submitting a bid.
Uh-huh.
It's not, in my industry, we do several rounds of the re-submission of bids during the RFP proposal. So at the end of the RFP process, we actually have the after the long list, the short list, we have the supplier selection.
Including the actual bid. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Bernard,
I can only add to this or precise. We need to be clear that we have a right supplier, but we are not sure that we have the right product. The right product is in the end of the request for proposal. This is the aim. Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Okay. And there is the last, which we would like to, last term, we would like to mention today, request for quote. So if we compare it to the other two, what is the simple definition of, from your point of view, Doris? What is the difference?
The basic difference is at the end of the RFQ process, you would award a purchase order or a contract. And usually I use it only for very simple items, which are off the shelf and which are widely available in different suppliers. So it's it's a very straightforward transactional type of purchase. So you would go and buy, I don't know, and it's something that you don't need very often. You don't need it on recurring basis. It's something that you need once in a while. So you don't need, for example, you don't buy every day, I don't know, an iPad, but you need just to get a specific iPad for a specific person. So you just request the price from 3 or 4 distributors and ask them to submit their quotations to you, and you just go and buy it. You issue a purchase order.
Would you agree, Bernard, or do you see it from a different point of?
Yes, I agree, but saying this, it's logical that in the plastic industry, this request for is not practical, is not existing, because we are buying unique things which are specified on the high level. So it's not like you go to the shop to buy these resins or plastic, because this is tailored industry. So I'm not using this.
I see. Have you ever experienced the request for a bid? The reason why I'm asking, because we have experience in our company with e-auctions and so on. Have you experienced anything like this in your fields, that the procurement evaluation would continue in this type of evaluating the bid or the offer, or before finishing it by signing the contract?
Yes, I have. Actually, we have used e-auctions in our so-called RFP process. So once we have defined who are the suppliers that can meet the requirements, and eventually even submitted a statement of compliance to the functional or technical specification, we did some bidding on some e-auction platforms.
Mm-hmm. Just to add, was the outcome satisfying? Were you happy with it? Did it have
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. If I would have the opportunity, I would use it every time.
Okay. And Bernard, have you experienced anything like that, I suppose?
Not directly me, but I'm not in the current company. I was not in the previous company. Only one buyer. There are different categories, even in the injection molding company or in distribution company than resins. So I have no experience like the buyer responsible for resins, for production or for distribution, but the people who are responsible for general non-production category, or for more simple production category, like, I don't know, packaging, or maybe the foams which are not highly specified. It's working, and this is effective. But once again, in my case, we are talking about the niche, and in here it's not possible. So I will be very interesting if somebody from the plastic industry who is buying the sophisticated chemical product is coming to me and saying that he is using this tool. So I'm not close for this, but I will be just surprised.
Surprised. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Excellent. We briefly went over all our terms, including the request for something, so all the possible stage of requesting from your suppliers chain. Would you, because we almost run out of our time, so we, in case we would like to make it short and sweet at the end, since I see there are no questions, if I'm not mistaken. Would you like to summarize and make it short and sweet at the end, as far as using the RFX system for everything from your point of view at the end?
Okay, I would say the RFI is to be used for market information. You should never award any contract or purchase order based on an RFI. You should go through an RFP process once you have prepared your requirements and you know exactly what you would like to buy, or at least you have a functional or an idea of what you want to buy. Then you go through the RFP and you make sure that you do it in a transparent and very staged way. Sure, if you can use the e-auctions, use the bidding tools whenever possible. And when you want to use to buy something that you don't use very often or that you buy seldom, and it's a very simple purchase, then you can use the request for quote. The request for quote, it's actually resulting in a purchase order. In my case, the request for proposal is usually resulting in a contract.
Thank you. And Bernard, could you summarize all the terms?
I will add one sentence. Adjust the tool to the area in which you're in the industry in which you are used to work for. Don't waste the time for very sophisticated tool if this is not useful for your industry. If you are in the production industry, even you are using request for the information and request for the proposal, do not forget about the tools like sampling or audits before implementation of the new supplier or even the final contract, because you never know how the plant looks like, you never know how the product is described and what is the difference between the description and real chemical properties.
Great, thank you everyone. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you for joining your thoughts and your point of view with us. Thank you again, and have a great afternoon. Doris, thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and have a great day.
Thank you. And a big thank you goes to Bernard as well. Thank you very much, Bernard.
Thank you. It was my pleasure, and have a good afternoon.
Okay.
Thank you also to you, to all of you, and we are looking forward to seeing you next time on Procurement Dictionary.